So 1900 rated player, we're going to open up with e4 here. And then we'll go for, he goes for a Sicilian. Now, this is actually a common little trap. That the idea is that immediate d4 is not as good as playing more in a delayed Sicilian fashion. Funnily enough, I was told this by an international master who's very theory focused. I was told this a number of years ago, and right now I cannot remember exactly why. All I can remember is that you're not supposed to immediately castle, so or to immediately play d4 against this early a6 system. So I give you guys half of what you need to know about that, and maybe the other half you guys can go ahead and figure it out on yourselves. I think one of the things that's really, really important for chess players is just learn to get your own answers at times, because like having a coach, I think is really great. I mean, I'm a coach myself, so I'm not going to say that there's no value or no logic to getting a coach, but it's a bit like, I don't know, if you go to a yoga class or something, you know, you do your hour of yoga a day or a week or whatever, but then you do absolutely nothing outside of that. You're going to make progress, but it's not going to be that much. Or if you do an hour of maths or something a day, depending on your ambition, you have to figure stuff out. Anyway, I'll stop talking about things that aren't chess, like yoga or maths. I really should stick to what I know. But anyway, the big thing that I would advise guys is just to self-study and to work away from, you know, just only this interaction. And if you have a doubt, if you have a question, you can ask stronger players, but sometimes you don't have to actually have somebody there, like a friend or a coach or whatever. You can figure that answer if you do some self-analysis as well, especially with engines, etc. So taking it to this game here, I'm winning a pawn. The whole sequence here was basically the queen was on d5. I figured c4 was a kind of a nice idea to hit the queen with tempo, and then d5 to hit the knight. And then he threw in this intermezzo move. I certainly didn't want to take here because, for example, he could take back and I'm down a pawn. So I took here. Then he went knight d4. Makes a lot of sense. But after d takes e6, this guy is hanging. If he plays knight takes, I would take back with the queen. And anyway, this guy would be hanging. So he had to deal with this bigger problem on e6. So he captured and I took the pawn. So that's just sharing with you what has happened so far in this game. Now, the option to exchange the queens is there, but I'm going to go for queen a4 check instead. And the logic is that there's a really good rule of thumb. And the rule of thumb goes like this. If your king is safer than your opponent's, don't exchange queens. If your king is less safe, do exchange queens. So that's sort of a broad thing. And also, of course, when I played this move queen a4 check, it had a nasty little trap, which he's fallen for after queen d7. I'll show it now in a second. But therefore, I knew he would have to play king e7 or king d8 in order to avoid losing material. And king e7 or king d8 is really very, very unpleasant. The king on e7 would block all his pieces. The king on d8 would line up with the queen and rook d1 ideas. And his coordination is really bad. But queen d7 is even worse because of bishop c6 here. So sorry if Chrysios at some point is checking this. I didn't mean to slow roll him. But I just wanted to explain that. So sorry if that came across a little bit insensitive. Okay, so knight f6. Let's try something else. Let's go for potentially an Imzo Indian here. Let's go for a Queen's Indian with b6. He goes bishop g5. Not the most usual move. I'll just develop with bishop to b7. Kick out his bishop. And I've won the bishop here. It's not a big advantage at all to have won the bishop pair because I have a lot less space in the position. He has a very solid center. So because of this, I'm actually even playing bishop b4 and I'm suggesting to him that I may very well give back my bishop pair advantage extremely soon. But not necessarily. If he doesn't bother me here, maybe I won't. Here, in fact, I'm going to go for bishop takes f3. And the idea is that if queen takes f3, queen takes f3, pawn takes f3, pawn takes, pawn takes, I want this damage structure for him. Now, I don't know how good that actually was. Maybe there was some subtle point like knight b5, then I have to go knight c6 to avoid tricks like knight c7. Although that's actually not true. If knight b5, maybe I could have taken here, knight c7, then taken here. Suddenly I'll end up 2 pawns up. If he goes rook takes f2, I'll go bishop c5 and win an exchange. Things like that. So there are some tricks like that. And then if he ever takes, then I could go back, knight to a6 and the knight. On a8 might have some problems. So there were some very complicated lines there arising from all of that, but none of that happened because he took like this. And this was kind of the basic version of what I was aiming for, which is that by exchanging everything here and also exchanging these guys, I give him these double isolated pawns, which I think are quite unpleasant to deal with. And here I think I have a tactical shot. I think I can actually take this pawn on d4. His idea is that he wants to win this rook, but my idea is I can take this knight on c3. And the point is my threat is knight e2. Maybe he could have actually just gone rook here on d1. And then the point is, after I take, then he saves his bishop. Or if rook d1, I take here, he takes, then I take here, he moves the king, then I go here, defend this pawn, he kicks me away, then I take here, and then he takes here. Something like that. And in the end, he's got 4 pawns and I've got 6. So I've got knight and 2 pawns for a rook. But his rooks are quite, and I've got a much better structure. His rooks are quite active. If I had to intuitively guess, I would say that position is equal. But he goes b takes c3. So basically what I'm saying is maybe after bishop takes, if he goes rook d1, bishop takes b2 maybe is the best move. Bishop e4, something like that. And in that position, I've got 7 pawns and he'll have 5. In that case, I still have a knight and 2 pawns for the pieces. But because he won't have won the pawn on d7, the structure is a lot better. Those lines are a little bit advanced there in terms of what I'm showing, but I'm basically just comparing between the possibility of rook takes bishop here and bishop takes b2. And I feel like materially they'll both be the same, but I think after bishop takes b2, there are less open lines and less activity of his rooks, so his extra exchange counts for a little bit less. But anyway, he didn't do any of that, instead opting for this variation. And here I think I just get a completely winning rook and pawn endgame. He goes after the d7 pawn, so I'm just going rook d8 as the only way to defend the pawn. Then I'll bring the king over. I'll place the king on e7, and then I'll bring my other pieces. Maybe even play d5 here, pawn takes, rook takes, and pawn takes. King takes, no, but that's just craziness. That is not a clearly winning king and pawn endgame at all, even if my structure is a lot better. So do not do that. Right now, his structure is extremely ugly. His pawns are all isolated, and 2 sets of them are doubled. So it's about as bad as a structure can get. Now the good thing, not the good thing, but the one thing that makes the task a little bit more manageable is the fact that the pawns here are actually quite near to each other. So the king can actually potentially defend these against an attack and these at the same time. So I think that's something that is very under talked about point at the club level, but the distance of the weaknesses can sometimes be a big factor. For example, if this pawn was here instead, I think that structure would be a little harder to defend. But in this case, d5 here is a tactical opportunity that White overlooked. By playing a4, he needed to have moved his rook somewhere to take away that option. But after d5, he took and resigned. The problem is Black is threatening to just take here and then follow up with taking here. And And if you play c takes d5, he resigned because rook takes d5 will pick up this rook. So Bondmaid asks, "Are you watching the candidates?" No, haven't watched them from start to finish, but definitely have looked at the games a little bit. So I don't know why I said no. I mean, I would say that I spent maybe about an hour looking at the candidates today. So I don't know what watching the candidates mean. Am I aware of the results? Yes, and the results were cool. Very interesting results today. Wang Hao with a win as black against Ding Liren is a very interesting start to the event. Sort of one of the wild cards, so to speak, not the literal wild card, who is Alexeyenko, but by wild card I mean just somebody who's a little bit unexpected to have been in the event. So here I'm not so sure about this way of playing for black. He overextends against this this silly little setup against the French. So it's a bit of a trick. And yeah, black is now down 2 pawns, and he goes for a queen exchange, which I'm happy to do so. And then exchanges here, damaging my pawn structure, but ultimately the damage is not so significant. And of course, 3 pawns up, the position is very straightforward to win. I'll go here, rook g8, and now I'll break with f5. Not only opening up the position and damaging his structure, opening up my bishop scope, but of course, importantly, just getting rid of the double pawns. Now the reason I gave up my bishop here is just because this pin is a very attractive pin. It forces king d8, because otherwise bishop g5 was coming, further pinning black down. And yeah, after this move, I guess I'm just going to put the king on a light square, just so that there are no checks. And now I think I can actually even take this pawn here. Rook takes. The point is, oh yeah, sorry, okay, bishop here, bishop check. I had actually seen that at one previous move, but I had forgotten. Yeah, and the idea behind bishop takes was if rook takes, then rook check and picks up this rook on a8. So it goes rook h2. Now I'll go rook g1, I guess. And yeah, I just want to place my rook on g8 if possible, or maybe on g6, and again create some serious problems against this king. He goes a5. I don't know what to do. I could just play a4 and sort of say, okay, your turn, but yeah, there should be something better than that. Okay, let's go bishop f4 and hit his rook. I'm probably expecting rook here, but no, he goes there. I'll go rook g6. And he could go rook a6 to defend the pawn, but then I could push with d5. Yeah, he resigns. It's a lot of pawns. So white is up 4 pawns there. Okay, so Rediban says good luck with the last game. Probably the last game will be this coming game now, whenever I'm paired. So thank you, Mr. Rediban. How are people enjoying the candidates?